At an alarming rate, our natural world is becoming smothered by industrial production. This has driven us into the Anthropocene, a new geological epoch where nature and culture have become inseparable. Somehow, in the midst of ruins, we must maintain enough curiosity to notice the strange and wonderful, as well as the terrible and terrifying. One example of this strange and wonderful is when my father and I venture out into the bushland behind our home and stumble upon a satin bowerbird bower, beautifully sculpted tunnels of twigs with a scattering of blue almost resembling a moat surrounding a castle. This moat is made out of pieces of our everyday, straws, bottle caps, and pegs. We so often see these items that we are unfazed, but at what point do we become haunted by this bower when we realize that this wild creature is using our waste, our plastic, our litter, in order to court a mate? As Tsing claims, living in a time of planetary catastrophe thus begins with a practice that once humble and difficult, noticing the world around us. This noticing is vital as it goes beyond looking as we take time to observe our everyday life and become reflective of our impact on Earth. Right now, I want to take time to notice 3 strange things in everyday life: leather and fur clothing, geoengineering, and a satin bowerbird bower, which through exposure have become normal. Only when we reflect upon these strange things and see how our artists have explored them using the process of defamiliarization do we understand how unnerving they really are. Defamiliarization is a term coined to describe art as an experience of perception. As our perception of something becomes habit or automatic due to being exposed to it so often, we stop learning or contemplating the thing that we are looking at. Basically, we get used to horrible things and stop fearing them. Art is a means to make things real again. Since the 1960s, global extinction has dramatically increased. Part of this was caused by the international trade boom due to the growing economy following war, which placed extinction hand in hand with fashion. Leather and fur coats are viewed as high-end fashion items, which feed into the relationship between items and status. After these skins have gone through production and placed on retail shelves, our perception of the item and where it originated becomes separated. In a similar retail setting, Hayden Fowler underwent a performance artwork in which he had 2 extinct New Zealand birds tattooed on his back. The irreversibility of this act echoes the inability to bring back the huia. It became forever lost at the hands of a devastating fashion trend. No recordings of the huia's call exist. Only a few music note transcriptions were left from the 1800s, which sound artist Sally Ann McIntyre plays on a music box and records in a forest area among the trees the huia once climbed. This work becomes harrowing as huia were sometimes baited to their murder by a human intimidating their call. More so, it becomes haunting as the calls of the remaining bird species presumably hold more resemblance to the late huia's call than the twinkling music box. This work allows us to notice through placing shame by giving the huia its voice back. We are reminded that consumerism comes at a cost, and that so often nature is left with the consequences. Extinction can be one example of nature's dependence on humans. This dependence has become much more intense as it has been observed that the natural world we knew before the Anthropocene as self-correcting, self-balancing, and self-healing is dead. The next strange thing I want to notice is geoengineering, which is the deliberate, large-scale intervention in the Earth's natural systems to counteract climate change. Janet Lawrence nurtures this dependent nature in her installation, Cellular Gardens, where the use of glass vessels and plastic tubing imitate an intravenous system, making the plants appear hospitalized. Presenting natural, living things in this way expresses its fragility, calling to the suffering ecology that is in desperate need of fixing. When you really begin to notice geoengineering, you will come to realize that we are simply stealing nature away from nature. It makes you wonder, should we be fixing the world first or fixing ourselves? Finally, I return to the bushland behind my house to notice the satin bowerbird bower. When plastic is seen in such a well-organized and obscure way, it can be difficult to understand the negative impact it has on Earth. Alejandro Duran organizes these plastic installations in the same way a bowerbird does, by presenting the issue of mass production and consumption in a way that doesn't make us want to turn away in disgust. His colorful rainbow gradients of plastic waste are arranged in an unfamiliar way. This increases the length and difficulty of perception, prolonging the viewing experience and allowing us to not simply glance, but really notice the materiality of these forms and begin to contemplate how they came to be. Before plastic, bowerbirds would decorate their nests with feathers and shells, the same way Camillo Beach in Hawaii would collect logs brought by a current. Nowadays, it has become a terminal point for garbage. Among the rubbish, a geologist and a sculptor found unusual pieces of volcanic rock, lines of plastic objects melted and embedded inside to create what is called plastiglomerate. These ready-made artworks are evidence of humans' impact on Earth and are being disputed as the starting point of the Anthropocene, as these curious items are neither industrially manufactured nor geologically created. What all these works do is challenge the idea that art can make visible a problem too large to otherwise understand. A part of this visibility is noticing, rather than glancing. If we are to notice the world around us, whether it be the leather, the fur coat, the prospects of geoengineering, or a satin bowerbird bower, we may begin to understand our impacts on Earth, and we may use art to help reach this understanding.